All right, guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to talk about stages of development in my Rise of Kingdoms journey. The reason, I guess, why I decided to choose this topic is because in my real life, I own a CrossFit gym, right? So in CrossFit, there's stages of development and it's very clear when a person kind of cross over from one stage to another. And I found that when you give them a heads up, you kind of let them know, hey, this is what you can expect next. These are some things to focus on to help you progress. They tend to enjoy the current stage they're in a lot more, but also it sets them up to progress a lot more responsibly and a lot faster. All right, so this is just my personal experience, observations. Like I literally made this up. I think other people could have different experiences. Also, the time domain is a little bit different, right? I think if you're spending, you're a little bit more obsessed with the game, it probably will be faster. And then for some people, it's a lot slower. So this is just my personal experience. So the first stage is the noob stage, right? When you're brand new in your home kingdom, you haven't done a KVK yet, and then you're just learning the game, right? For me, it was like 0 to 4 months, so like a little bit after the first KVK. And this stage, you're still like trying to figure out, oh my God, like Sun Tzu, he's like so good. He's the best epic. He's pretty much a mini legendary, right? You're just trying to get your commanders to level 60. What skills do you like work on? You just max it because it's epic sculptures. It's not that hard to get. Some commander pairings that you think work, and then YouTubers don't mention, you're like, oh, there's missing something, there's a blind spot. And then afterwards, as you get more experience, you realize the reason why the pairing that you think should work good doesn't work that well. Like for example, I remember I think Chisgul was talking about how like if you run Bjorn and Sun Tzu, right, should run Bjorn first because there's a debuff, like the damage taken debuff, that then Sun Tzu could come in and clean up and do a lot more damage after. And I don't remember the reason why, but I just thought like Sun Tzu primary and then Bjorn secondary is a better fit. And I just decided to run that instead, right? And looking back, I think Bjorn primary, Sun Tzu secondary is probably the way to go. Equipment, you're just kind of learning equipment for the first time, right? I remember like the blacksmith part where you could just queue for like free equipment every day. I would rotate between like bone and leather and ebony just because I thought all of them were equally important, right? You just make a lot of new mistakes where you're just learning it. Armaments, that didn't get introduced until like KVK 2 or 3 for me, so I don't remember what it was like when I first started out, but I imagine just another complex system where you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes, but you're just kind of figuring that out, right? I think most players start out free to play, especially when you're brand new, and then it's just whether like you get frustrated enough where you become obsessed with the game when you start spending, right? Like for me, a lot of it is one, I'm obsessed with I'm like, wow, I like this game way more than I thought I would. And then also like seeing other people progress, I wanted to catch up to them. That's when I started spending. I don't think I spent until like month 4 of playing this game, so it's okay to start out free to play and see how this game works for you, right? Events, you'll start being introduced to these events for the first time. So like when the Wheel of Fortune comes out, right? Do you spend it to 10? Do you spend it to 100? Like what is your level of spend on that? Like you're literally learning all of these things for the first time, right? You start doing stupid stuff with your gems. I remember spending, I think, like 4,000 gems on gold keys just because I thought they were a good investment. For the alliance, like you're not even worried about your kingdom, right? You're worried about, can my alliance make it to the top? Or if there is a clear top alliance, you're like, hey, can I get into the top alliance? And being into the top alliance is like a source of pride because that's where like the best players are. You didn't even realize there's so many other players in other kingdoms that are in the similar stage as you, that maybe some of the players that you think are really good are actually not that good, right? And then you get into KVK, right? So this is where, for me, I first got introduced to the basics of fighting because up to that point, I've just been fighting essentially NPCs. We didn't have a civil war, right? I'm just killing barbs and whatever. So you actually start realizing there's a player on the other side you get to fight. A lot of it is just learning how not to get zeroed, right? Random TPing, just because like you're impatient and you don't want to wait for the flag to build, or everyone just stealing all the spots so you can't get a flag. Experiencing rally or garrison for the first time, not sending a rally, not joining a rally from really far away, not putting the wrong troop types, things like that. And for me, I never really got to use up my resources or speeds in KVK1. It was just not an issue. So, but you start getting to use it, and you realize, okay, this is why you do want resources, right? That's because when in KVK, when you're fighting, you need to heal. That actually goes by a lot faster. And no, I forgot to mention, like even your hospital, right? Like, okay, you could wait a little bit longer to heal your hospital, and you have to heal it right away. Or if you cut it too close and you get dead troops, and then you realize like you get them back, like all these things. But the whole point is, this stage is very magical because one, you can never go through it again. But you when everything's new and novel, there's actually an excitement and fun to it, right? So just enjoy it for what it is. And then if you want a way to learn and speed up the learning process, one, watch YouTube videos. There's a lot of guides out there. A lot of what they talk about will go over your head, but if you heard it once, when you're experiencing it in the game, there's more of a likelihood that it'll click in. And also, if you listen to it again, you'll be able to retain more of it. And then the number one way to set yourself up to get ahead when you're in this stage is to get comfortable with a PC version of the game. You need it to be able to fight effectively. I've talked about this over and over now in other videos, but get it before KVK and start kind of getting used to the hotkeys and just the controls on there. It maybe takes like 30 minutes to learn at most, right? But if you get it, it'll give you a massive advantage in the first KVK and help you have an enjoyable experience transitioning out of the noob stage. Second stage, I'll call it the concept to experience stage. This is where, okay, you're a little bit more familiar with the commanders. Right now, you're worried about multiple marches, right? It's not, by the way, the answer does not have to be 5. In KVK 1, 2, and even 3, it is perfectly reasonable just to have one march where you get the equipment and the armaments to a decent place, and you use that to get kills, right? And it'll actually be a lot more enjoyable than if you try to run 5 marches with shitty commanders, shitty equipment, and you're just racking up the hospital bill and not really doing that well on the field, right? But you kind of start figuring out how many marches you can support. So basically, for every march you get, you're going to need to have the equipment and armament set with it, along with a commander getting to level 60, which, you know, is still a challenge in this stage, and then having the right skills, right? So figuring that out. At this point, too, I think it also becomes more clear whether you're going to stay a free-to-play or a spender. And then when you first start spending, just know it'll be less than probably what you end up at for a lot of people. But you'll also start kind of figuring out a budget per month that you're willing to spend that feels good. And if you go above that, it's okay, but you don't want to consistently be above that, right? So the events, you start figuring out there's like a rhythm to each event. So for example, if More Than Gems comes out, right, the max you can spend per day for that over 2 days is 25,000 per day. And there's like a cutoff where like you could get X amount of gold heads at the 7,000 mark. Maybe you want 7,000 gems each day instead of 25,000 gems each day, right? Maybe for the wheel, you're going to spend to 10 for max efficiency. For Esmeralda, maybe you're going to skip that. For the egg event, maybe you're going to do that to 10 or to 40. Right? You start actually almost figuring out the rhythm of each event and how much to spend. This is also where I started playing ALO for the first time, Ark of Osiris. I would actually recommend, if you can, start playing it right away, right? Like I remember feeling a little bit intimidated, right? These players are all talking about stuff, I have no idea what it is. I feel like they're all probably better than me. I'm just going to be a dead weight reliability. Whereas this is a great source of free gold heads and gems every 2 weeks. And you could get into a non-competitive one, just any one, just so you could kind of learn the rules and get a feel for it. Over time, that actually makes a big difference in your account growth. At this point, the alliances should be fairly settled, right? There should be like one top alliance in your kingdom, and ideally, you're in that alliance. You worked your way in that alliance. In KVK, so this is like about KVK 2 and 3, right? You actually start also gaining more of a basic understanding of like territory, like when people are building flags, dropping forts, like strategy, what's a good strategy, what's not a good strategy. You actually kind of understand KVK at a bigger level. And also you start becoming aware of other KVKs, right? So it's not just, oh, okay, KVK 2 is coming up, that's the most important thing. You get, hey, there's these like monster Imperium KVKs. And it's not just Imperiums for a new kingdom, it's actually Imperium at the end game level. And you can start watching it. and one, realize how big of a gap it is. Like every single player in that KVK has like double the power of the highest power player in your KD, like things like that, right? Also, on the field, you start kind of knowing what commanders to target, right? You have like a basic idea who's squishier, who's not. You almost instinctively know which players are probably weaker or not. If you're looking at their like KP, account age, well, not account age, everyone's the same account age, but you start kind of looking at their KP, power, and then also the commanders they're using, you'll already kind of get an idea who's stronger or not. I remember, I think this was KVK2, a whale at the time was like 5 march surrounding this player. And I had an Alex YSG, and I was like, oh, you know, they're not attacking me. Let me just march up. And I think I marched almost like into a position where when he switched targets onto me, all marches hit me, and I just melted right away, right? And after that, I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that again, right? Just because that guy's not targeting me doesn't mean he couldn't easily switch on to me. And if I put myself in a position where I'm kind of in the middle of that, obviously I'm gonna get melted, right? Like KVK2 learned that lesson the hard way. Ways to set yourself up for the future. This is where watching more YouTube videos obviously will help, but you'll actually get even some of the videos that you saw in the first stage, when you watch it again this time, you'll get a lot of the stuff that you missed the first time. That's because the concept actually is starting to become an experience, right? So you can imagine if someone who's never dated before, and I'm giving them advice or tips on dating, right? It's all a concept. They haven't even experienced messing it up, what it's like, the dynamics, the nuances. Whereas once you've gone through that cycle and you have the experience, whether it's success or failure, and then you're seeing people talk about it, you can actually absorb a lot more of it. So like even rewatching videos that you've seen before, you'll start getting a lot from it. And then at this point, if you get anything from this video, this is number one, which is to start building farms. You most likely won't need it, right? I didn't really need farms until after KVK 4. But if you start building it now, that transition is going to be a lot less painful. So 2 notes on farms. One, the biggest barrier to me for building a farm was that starting tutorial, right? It's only 5 minutes, but just in my mind, I didn't want to go through that, and I didn't feel like building it. And it just, you know, I didn't want to click through stuff for 5 minutes, and it actually prevented me from building a farm for a long time. And the second one was if you try to create a farm, you'll notice that they only allow you to create 2 accounts in a kingdom. I think back in the day, you're able to like kind of game it. You could bring your accounts and your farm to Lost Kingdom and KVK, and then you can start 2 more accounts in your main kingdom, right? But they took that away now, so you actually have to start an account in another kingdom. And if you do start one, just don't start one in a brand new kingdom. Start one in an older kingdom, because when you get to City Hall 16, you can migrate it. Whereas like if you're starting a brand new kingdom, it's going to be months and months and months before you are actually getting to the Season of Conquest, where you can migrate your farm to a kingdom that's already in Season of Conquest. Just start with one. And I don't know if it's a mistake, probably is. The mistake I made with starting my first farm was that I played it like a free to play account, where I did everything on that, right? I did the barbs, I did all the events, well, not all of it, a lot of the events, right? I try to have 5 marches in Canyon. I built an equipment set for each of them. It was actually very time intensive, and I got into City Hall 25. Whereas like the subsequent farms I started, I just realized there's no way I could keep that up for all these accounts. You just kind of do the bare minimum, right? Sometimes maybe I'll just log in for like 2 minutes at a time, like 2 or 3 times a day, just to upgrade the buildings and build stuff, right? It's okay if you're not efficient with that. It's just like once you get it started and you progress it slowly, when you'll actually need it, if your farm isn't there yet, it'll be close enough where that transition isn't that painful. But if you get anything from this video, in this period, 4 to 8 months, or maybe even earlier, start a farm. And then I'll cover this in a later video, but however marches you plan on using, I would recommend having like 1 farm per march. So if you're going to run 6 marches in the future, even though you're not doing it now, just start 6 farms now. And I actually heard that from a 12-inch video, I think maybe a year ago or 6 months ago. It's a while ago. I heard it. It didn't really land with me like as something that's important. And then with where I'm at now in the game, it's super important. All right, the next stage, the road to 30 million kills, right? So for me, that's the 8th to 14th month. So that's when KVK3 ended. And it became a reality that, hey, I could probably get to 30 million kills, right? And that is, I think, the last kill achievement in KVK. I think if I remember correctly, it's Faith 5. That's what it's called. Most people get stuck here. Some people never, a lot of people never get it. And then some of the people that do get it, they can't seem to push past that 30 million kill much, even if they wanted to. So I'll talk to you a couple of different parts of this. First, when you transition to Season of Conquest, right? Probably KVK 3 now. I didn't have that experience. Endgame commanders became available in KVK 4. There's a huge catch-up period, right? With all these new commanders, I didn't even have enough experience tomes to level them up. So I remember like marching around at Home Kingdom twice a day with my Guan Yu just to try to get my Guan Yu and my Henry at the time to level 60 so I can use them for my first SOC KVK. There's a huge gap there. And that's why a lot of these guides that I make and that other people make are to help you with that transition to endgame commanders, because that adjustment period is pretty rough, right? So really most of your focus is on just catching up on commanders. I made a guide. I'll link it in a card here for what I think the minimum equipment should be when you hit that end game for archer, cav, and infantry, right? And like to go beyond that, obviously your stats will be better, but to go beyond that, the amount of legendary material you're spending per stat gain starts going down. So like that that minimum end game is a good enough place to shoot for. And I think after you hit that, most of your attention should be on actually just getting legendary accessories for the end game, right? So like before end game, you can get like daggers and stuff, and I think you do need a dagger, but really what I'm talking about is a ring and a horn, right? So once you hit the minimum end game equipment, then you actually just start focusing on ring and horn, and I think you could get a ring and a horn in each KVK, provided that you're not wasting your tokens on everything else. And if you get too far ahead where you're not going to be able to complete it before the next KVK, then you could buy it on other stuff. But I think the priority, especially with the new iconic system, is to actually always get a ring and a horn in KVK. Your armament should be pretty much done for the most part. Doesn't mean you can't improve on it, but the improvement is going to be incremental. And when you do get an improvement, it's actually a small improvement. It's not some like monster improvement. Right at the end game, most of your upgrades will actually be coming from equipment. That's where most of your focus should be on. But if you're not there with your armaments, then get it there, because that's actually way easier to kind of hit the end game. And once you get there, then it just kind of maintenance from there, right? In KVK, this is where you kind of start noticing there's a rhythm of fighting. You start noticing little things. When you should be pulling back, what should be going forward. When someone's targeting you, you don't have to retreat, because they'll probably retreat first. And then if you actually stay there and let them retreat, you could get another skill cycle in. Just a lot of these like little nuanced things. And then ways to set up for the future. I think this is where it doesn't mean you can't watch it before, but this is where when you're watching streams of like a good content creator, you'll start picking up a lot of like little details that you probably missed before just because you haven't gotten there yet. Right, so watching streams will help a lot. You start also kind of getting a feel for what kind of kingdom suits you, right? Like if you're in a B seed, do you feel like, hey, an A seed with a little bit more spenders, maybe like a little bit more competitive will actually suit your personality? Or if the A seed is requiring a little bit too much time and, the wife or work doesn't allow you to have that time, maybe going to a B seed would be better suited for you. You start kind of getting a feel for that. I think you should not migrate back. Number one reason, just because to me, KVK 2 and KVK 3 is just way less fun than SOC KVKs, right? It's way less fun, but also when you go back and beat up on players that are just a lot less experienced, but also have a lot less equipment, armaments, and even like commanders, uh, there's like there's a aspect of it where it's not challenging and you actually get a little bit soft. I don't think it happens to everyone because there are players I know that migrated back that are back in SOC and doing better than ever. But I think for most people, you're not going to get what you're looking for back there. And even if you get it for a bit, this game will kind of lose its luster for you. And I don't think you'll really be able to fully enjoy the end game for what it actually offers. And then building on the point from the last slide, you want to keep building your farms, right? One farm for each march you plan on using. Ideally, you could get it to City Hall 25, so when you do the transfer, you get the minimum amount of taxes. It's so important. I think the end game meta right now, not only do the farms give you resources, but then these farms you can actually use to fill garrisons, maybe even rallies, right? And it's standard for high-end end-game kingdoms in the middle part of KVK for fights that aren't quote-unquote not as consequential to start trying to drain the other side using their farms. So like it's a very real scenario where the side that, if they're equal, the side that has more capable farms will actually make the difference. All right, this last one, I'll call it the ROK Glowup. Right, it's where 30 million kill achievement is actually fairly easy, right? You start getting an idea, hey, you know what? When there's good fighting, I'm getting 3 million kills per hour, right? Then if I fight 10 hours, that's 30 million right there. And for most people, it's not something where that's like the goal they're hoping to get. It's just something they know they'll get along the way. The glow, I also call it a glow up because fighting in the end game becomes much easier compared to your first SOC KVK. In general, the way this game works, right? It happens in plateaus, and when you get to a certain stage, right, which I would say is where this glow up stage is, the players that are better than you are still better than you, but like they had to spend so much more time and resources to get better that like you're at least within the realm of being able to be competitive with them, and it's not so challenging anymore. I want to say very few, but most players get stuck at the previous stage, and the players that are in this stage and beyond, which I don't have that experience, are the ones that you typically find in the very high-end kingdoms and imperiums, and that's where they mostly reside, right? So right now I'm currently like about 19 months into this game, right? So right now, I noticed it happened about 4 or 5 months ago during my 5th KVK, where the 30 million kill achievement just isn't something that's like that big of an achievement anymore. It became a lot easier. And the biggest differentiating factor for that was that I started catching up on my end game commanders, right? Once you could get like one to like expertise and another one to 5551, you start noticing the commanders are able to do well enough on the field where like the getting that 30 million kill achievement just isn't that hard. And then at this point you start actually banking your gold heads, right? So if you caught up, then you actually bank your gold heads, you kind of get ahead, you're saving it up, so when the next cycle of commanders come out, you could actually instant max it, or you want to be quote unquote kind of efficient, maybe you just spend the wheel to 10, and then when you need to max it, you can max it. So you're not scouring all over the place for gold heads, you're actually ahead on gold heads, and you're just prepared for the next commander to come out. Your armaments should also be mostly done at this point, right? I talked about that earlier. It's something where it's cool when you get an upgrade, but almost all of your stat gains should be coming from equipment to get it to iconic or whatever iconic you plan on getting it to. And the improvement is a lot smaller, right? So you're not getting these massive improvements per like legendary material and blueprint spent, but that's just where you can start. That's just the last frontier where you're still trying to get better. You also start noticing like plateaus or bottlenecks for you, right? So for some people, for me, it's resources. Some people, it's speeds. Some people, it's just the amount of time they can play, right? There's that work factor, the wife factor. Also just what your tolerance is for sitting in front of a screen. And then you start also noticing like there's little skill stuff that you can do better, right? And the skill stuff, um, everyone's a little bit different, all right, but like you'll notice maybe there's some stuff that you got away with when you're in kvk2, right? If you migrate back, or you're playing in like a b seed, whereas like when you're playing in Imperium Kingdom, like you just can't get away with that kind of stuff, right? And that comes from experience. You start learning things like that. For me, currently, like my off-season project is I want to get 6 fully operational like City Hall 25 farms, right, to support my marches. And so that's kind of my off-season project. That's actually where my bottleneck is. And if I get that, then the next bottleneck will actually probably be speeds, and I probably just need to chain more, right? So you start kind of figuring out how to take your game, so to speak, to the next level. You're also start looking for the next challenge, right? Because if 30 million isn't a challenge, then what's your next challenge? Maybe it's you want to get into leadership. Maybe it's moving up a weight class, right? So wherever you are, the KDs that you're fighting right now, you want to actually take on the next challenge. And this is where actually I can see if you want to start a jumper group, or you want to start in a brand new kingdom with a group of people you really like, you want to help run, build, and grow like a kingdom. I think this is where you could look into that. I don't think if you hit the stage, you should be starting a kingdom and helping run it, just because you haven't really gotten to a good point in the game yet where like you're a skilled and good player. So it's kind of weird that you're trying to lead other players when you haven't hit that yet. But that's just my personal opinion, right? And then ways to set up for the future. And this one, I think it's actually expanding your connections, right? Like people you know, people you meet during KVK, getting to know more and more people even in your kingdom. And then, you know, obviously I started a YouTube channel, so you meet people that way. But whether it's like wanting to get into leadership, going to another KD, starting a new project, it all requires working with other people and meeting other people. So that's something to start thinking about, is how do you actually expand your connections. And I'm sure there's stages after this, but this is just where I've gotten to. So I'm going to end that here, right? So if you got value from this video, I mean, if you watched all the way to the end, hopefully you did, please like and subscribe to the video if you haven't. And if you have any suggestions, like always, please leave it in the comments. I do read all of them, like to respond, at least the productive ones, I'll respond to them. And hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.